Welcome to the Recruitment Leadership Podcast, hosted by Alison Humphries. The Recruitment Leadership Podcast is here to help those in the recruitment industry gain awareness and understanding on the hot topics faced by those in the business of hiring people. In each episode, Alison Humphries is joined by a fellow expert to offer professional knowledge, insight and advice on the biggest subjects affecting recruitment businesses. It's the podcast to listen to for recruitment business frontrunners seeking expert information from industry-leading advisors. Welcome to the Recruitment Leadership Podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Recruitment Leadership Podcast with me, Alison Humphries of Recruitment Leadership. Thank you so much for joining us. Those people who are new to the Recruitment Leadership Podcast, please hit subscribe. Every episode, I am joined by a fellow professional in the recruitment ecosystem. And that ranges from business owners to knowledgeable suppliers to the industry and thought leaders. So it's a real mix of opinions, demonstrations, stories, and so forth. Today, I'm really pleased to be joined by a representative of a business that I've referred quite a bit of business to myself, Abbie Black. Hello, Abbie, from Amiqus. Abbie is a senior client operations manager with Amiqus. That's Amiqus. And Amiqus started life as an identity service provider. Now, for anyone who's thinking, oh, this doesn't concern me, I'm a permanent recruiter, or my business is largely permanent, it really does. It concerns everyone in recruitment. We're going to be covering legislative changes and how you can actually generate revenue out of ID services and, how it especially affects regulated work and so on. Okay, so Abbie, thank you for joining me. And please stay tuned to the end of this podcast because Amiqus has kindly agreed to give listeners a special offer on their services. Right, let's get down into it. So, Abbie, for those people who maybe don't know about identity service providers, could you just give us a very brief history of how Amiqus started and where you are now?
Yeah, certainly. So Amiqus, we are a digital compliance and onboarding platform. We were founded in 2015, so we are over 10 years old now, and we've powered over 4 million compliance journeys to date. We are trusted by organisations, as you've mentioned, across different sectors, so recruitment, healthcare, government, financial services, legal services. And from the recruitment perspective, we allow recruiters to verify candidates' identity, right to work, criminal history, references, amongst other things. And we essentially allow recruitment organisations to do that digitally at scale. And on that digital point, as you mentioned, we are a certified IDSP under the UK government's DVS trust framework. So that essentially means that we are recognised, we are audited, ensures that our checks are legally recognised at the standard of that trust framework for right to work checks and DVS purposes.
Yeah, okay. And the way I like to imagine it is that you guys have a bat phone straight into the Home Office, so that when you're uploading a scanned passport or whatever, it's actually checking all of those records. And there's a surprising amount of fake passports and or tampered with passports.
Yeah, definitely.
So much more than that. I mean, it started as a necessary regulation in order to get round the need for face-to-face checks on temporary workers in COVID. Is now, as you explained, a full onboarding platform that speeds up your placements. It stops them falling through when clients themselves have poor onboarding processes, and I think many of us have experienced that problem recently.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's dig down. I want to talk about the Security, Asylum and Immigration Act. How does it affect the recruiters in the UK, please?
This act we're seeing it as a real structural shift when it comes to liability for right to work checks. I might start by just giving a bit of an overview of what the Act does. So the Act received royal assent at the end of last year in 2025. And Section 48 of that Act essentially extends the civil penalty liabilities beyond a traditional employment model that we've seen up until this point, in the sense that it's moving obligations from the employer to the organization. We refer to it as like the hosting organization. So there's a key language change in the Act, moving from employee to worker. So what that means for recruiters is that it's moving, and direct employers, it's moving the compliance obligations and the liability to contractors, subcontractors, 0-hour contract workers, to the organization that they are working in. So whereby previously it would have maybe been more of, if contractors are placed in an organization, it's the recruiter responsible for checking those individuals. The organization that those workers are going to be working in is also going to become liable for ensuring that those individuals have the right to work in the UK. So, as I said, it received royal assent at the end of last year. We are still waiting on some of the details to be released of that. So we're expecting the new right to work rules to come into place in October 2026. But the specific guidance hasn't yet been published. But I would say that the direction is unambiguous. It is extending that requirement for organisations to check not just their direct employees, but also ensuring that they are checking contractors, subcontractors, etc.
So do we see this as a duplication where the recruiter will do those checks because they're already obliged to, and then the end hirer will also do those checks?
So it's a really good question. I would say this is one of the items that we are waiting to get more guidance from government on. So through different working groups, we are waiting to. The Home Office is expected to publish more worked examples of different supply chain scenarios, because sort of as you've mentioned there, different scenarios, different supply chains can be complex. So we're expecting more of that to be worked through with the government. But I think on that point, it's still a question. So the recruiters' obligations, as you've said, don't and won't change. They still need to be checking the individuals. The question is, can the organisation, so the end client that's hosting that worker, can they rely on the recruiter's checks, or do they need to run their own checks independently? So that's something that we're waiting on. But I think, again, whilst we're waiting on the official confirmation of that, for recruiters, the important point to note now is, gone are the days of it being more of that arm's length relationship, whereby if it's a contractor, the organisation doesn't have to see the evidence. They can trust that it's being done by the recruiters. That is going to be gone in whichever capacity, whether it has to be the employers also run the checks, or whether it's they can rely on the evidence from the recruiters. Recruiters should be acting now, and they should be ensuring that their right to work processes are clear, are auditable. And for example, with Amiqus, that's something that we can facilitate. So having it in all of the checks in one place in a secure platform, that's the direction of travel that will help organisations to ensure that they are prepared.
Okay.
Essentially.
So, goodness me, if we are anticipating this to be implemented in October, and we're recording this towards the end of June in a heatwave, towards the
Not
end
Scotland.
of June, that doesn't
Yeah.
give us much time, does it?
No.
And look, recruiters know, and because the recruitment industry has traditionally dealt with a lot of small and medium employers, because obviously the larger ones will tend to have well-developed internal talent acquisition teams, then everyone who's got any experience of this will be rolling their eyes and thinking, employers don't know this, particularly smaller employers that don't have dedicated HR teams. And there's therefore likely to be a panic. And those, we've had quite a few of those already this year, that resulted in uncertainty, that stalled decisions and depressed hiring, most definitely. At the same time, having embedded a really reliable, reputable platform is an incredibly powerful sales argument, isn't it? If we're allowed to share our verification, then great. And if it does go down the sort of joint and several liability route, which is what happened with, IR35 statuses and so forth, and payments, so that pretty much anyone could be blamed, then we're all going to have a very good understanding of compliance and the tools and availability to do it. But one of the things I really liked about Amiqus right from the beginning was it's a very user-friendly interface for the recruiter, for the candidate involved, and although different sectors of temps and contractors have different levels of experience of having to upload all their credentials and so forth, everything coming to them on one platform instead of a chain of emails going, can you send me this? Oh, thanks. Can you now send me that? Which it really does try some people's patience.
100% that, and also the security of it as well. So using, people are becoming more and more aware of uploading, as they should be uploading their personal information to, and sending it via email. Candidates are becoming more and more reluctant to do that, and therefore using, like say, platforms like Amiqus, which is an encrypted platform, is the direction of, and should be the direction of travel there as well. Yeah.
You mentioned, I think earlier, about Amiqus now being a full onboarding platform. So let's just drill down on that, because Amicus's capability has expanded a lot since I first knew you guys. So just paint a picture, if you will, of the kind of checks that you can facilitate.
Yeah, so we can facilitate maybe a bit of an overview of how the process sort of works. So a recruiter or a direct employer, they would use the Amiqus platform. And from the Amiqus platform, they can issue all of their onboarding compliance checks, BPSS level checks, for example. They can do that from their Amiqus account. And that's within a few clicks. They can have saved workflows, customized workflows, and they essentially issue that request, we call it, to the candidate, and the candidate receives that via a secure email link to their email. That can be branded with whether it's the recruiter's name and logo, whether with custom messaging, whether the recruiter brands it up as the end client with their logo, that type of thing. That's then sent to the candidate. They receive that email and they go in and they complete their information, and they can do that via web. They complete their information securely. They, for example, identity verification, so proof of address, photo ID verification with a biometric liveness check to make sure that that is the individual. It's compared against their document.
So, sorry, just to cut in. So many people will have had experience of this. So they're holding up their phone and, turning their head. So it's
and that's all within the trust framework as well as a requirement for an anti-fraud measure. Yeah. And then they can also complete, we are Amiqus plugged into, we integrate with DBS, Disclosure Scotland, Access and I, so they can run their criminal record check as well. They can complete reference checks, so they complete all of their information there. The also great thing that we find, because every organization will have a slightly different workflow and slightly different requirements. So within the platform, we also enable organizations to send documents, to ask for documents back, to send custom forms, anything like that can be done through. So the candidates getting
for example, what might a custom form be?
A custom form could be anything from a questionnaire, anything, we've seen it going, organizations front loading it so much so that they get a photo of the individual for their ID badge, for example, as well. That type of thing, so that they can gather it all at once. And then the candidate takes a couple of minutes for them to complete that information. As you said, it's a very intuitive platform. Once that's submitted, the results are then available within the recruiter or the hiring organization's Amiqus account to review and approve.
Right. So it's not just eligibility to work in the UK. It can be everything from financial checks to safeguarding checks, but also things like professional registration and references as well. Now, this year, I've been speaking a lot about the general direction of traffic in the recruitment industry to more recurring revenue models. So in short, away from spot uncommitted one-off perm business to contract work with a more reliable forward income and retained work and, perhaps at the farthest end of that development curve, full statement of works contracts. And we've seen that borne out in the statistics that those markets are growing, whereas the spot permanent market is shrinking for recruiters. Yeah, we could go endlessly into the why, but in short, most employers can do that. They have the same tools. They can do it themselves. This is not an environment in which people want to recruit heavily straight off perm. Okay, how can services like Amiqus facilitate that move? How can they make it easier for us recruiters to win recurring revenue type commitments?
Yeah, I think what we're going to see is that recruiters that are going to win essentially and win those recurring revenue models, as you mentioned, they're not, it's placing people faster. Yes, that's definitely a requirement, but it's becoming that infrastructure, that kind of sticky partner that they can help their clients with from a compliance perspective, and becoming that partner that their clients can't operate without. So, every contract extension, re-engagement, new placement, it is a compliance event, but that's recurring admin, but that's recurring value that you can monetize on as well, as you mentioned. So again, what we're seeing, going back to the changes with the Act, but recruiters that can help their clients stay on top of compliance, they can provide full audit trails, they can manage expiry notifications, they can manage the whole workflow management. That is a revenue stream in itself that can be sold to clients.
Yes. Now, I'd like to come back and revisit that in a moment.
Mhm.
But I think this is an important point because I meet a lot of usually smaller recruitment businesses who see compliance in every area, their own staff handbook to doing checks on candidates. They see it all as a bit of a bore and a box ticking exercise. And
Yep.
actually, once you switch that process and start seeing it as a sales and marketing tool, because this really is the case that, compliance is way up there now with employers because of the risk they're carrying. Actually understanding it, even if you as a business owner work on the permanent side, is so critical.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be that as we're mentioning, moving to these digital journeys, moving to having somewhere that can be your sort of one-stop shop to complete it all. It doesn't have to be a burden, and it's like you say, it can be a competitive advantage for organizations, because in a tight labor market where if there is, especially say in contractors, where they have got options in terms of that onboarding journey last time took me 2 weeks. This on, via email, manual, I had to go in person, see someone, I had to go on a Teams or Zoom call, versus actually that other journey took me, a couple of, in total, I was ready to work within a day, 2 days.
Right.
They're going to pick that journey, and that's
They
a competitive
really are.
advantage. Yeah.
And could you just give us some statistics on that, please? Because I'm aware that Amiqus is able to get results from checks like DBS much more quickly than the average employer.
So because we are integrated with like DBS, for example, DBS, the information is standardized, the data that's sent to DBS. So there's very very small percentage, next to none, that we get whereby DBS push the application back, because the data is standardized. So because we're integrated, our platform will tell and help candidates know exactly what to input. That goes to DBS, the check is run, and then DBS, for example, pass back to Amiqus, indicative notice, and that is shown within the platform. So that's to say, while you're waiting on the certificate, here's the indicative notice. And we get that from DBS in real time, and therefore make that available to the recruiters, hiring organizations in real time as well. So we're seeing the majority of the results coming back in less than a day for our DBS checks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I know that many recruiters will be aware of poor client onboarding processes. And this is for perm placements as well as temp and contract. I don't think I know anybody who hasn't actually lost or become very, very close to losing a placement because of it. And, an overstretched HR department with manual processes, or perhaps someone who's not very sure about it or mistypes an email address, whatever it might be. These processes for the average employer stretch out for weeks. And yet we're getting it within a day if you're using a platform like Amiqus. Now, that's a really helpful and money-saving / money-making device.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Because it will save placements. Now, I'm aware that Amiqus offers recruiters a white label service. So recruiters can on-sell Amiqus to their clients. And you mentioned before about being that sticky supplier. Tell us how that works and how we can sell it to our clients.
So in terms of, as I've mentioned, the process, the white labeling, the candidate experience can be very much customized to whether that's the recruiter's process or whether the recruiters are customizing that based on their clients' processes, branded, logo, custom welcome emails, that type of thing can all be done through the platform. So in terms of how to sell using a platform like Amiqus as a competitive advantage, it's highlighting, as you've mentioned there, to the clients that the poor onboarding has a hidden cost. It's not actually that hidden. The candidates falling out of the process and the cost and time. We have seen with clients that, we've seen onboarding reduced from 3 weeks to 2 days. We've also seen a reduction with clients of 60% fewer emails, whether that be emails with candidates, internal emails. All of that is essentially material that recruiters can use to help sell this process. So I would say offering, to look at your client's current processes. What's their delays? What's their current onboarding times? What's their candidate drop off? And then look to use these kind of statistics to help, encourage and help organizations understand that it is a cost to them to have these longer, more arduous onboarding processes. And also the cost from the candidate perspective. It's a different story when a candidate turns up ready to work quicker. They've had a great experience. That's their initial, engagement with an organization. The first impressions do matter as well. So I would say in terms of how organizations can sell it, it is positioning as, you can be a managed compliance service as well. Positioning it, as you said, if you're working with recruiters working on the kind of SME side of organizations, you can give your clients an enterprise grade onboarding infrastructure that they couldn't build themselves if you partner with the right platforms.
Right.
And I think also planning for objection handling with clients. So, getting pushback of, we already have a process, or, we handle it. It's like, is asking questions, is it auditable? Is it digital? We know we are all moving to very much a digital model. The use of IDSP is going to be becoming not just the best practice, but standard. So it is, questioning your clients and, okay, you've got a process, but can you do it at scale? Can you do 50, 100, 200 placements at once in a day? And with the changes with the Act as well, that is going to be a really important selling point for recruiters to be able to sell that they have an auditable process for onboarding candidates.
Absolutely. So, and I know some listeners will be thinking, okay, great. So I can have this conversation with my client and they might go, yes, please. Tool is up. How long does it take to implement to get if I wanted, for example, to on-sell to my client, brand it as my client's identity and get it installed and their personnel trained on it? How long is that process?
It does depend on the organization, but it can be done in as little as less than a week.
Okay.
Right. It's very, very quick. There is, because again, the nature of certain checks and data that's made available, there does have to be an element of due diligence and onboarding that comes with that. But yeah, it can be very, very quick. And, the platform as well, when we set up organizations, we can set them up. We can find out about their processes. We create and help create the templates. So it's not a case of, this is something that we think is very important, is obviously setting clients up for success, but not giving them a blank platform that they have to go away and build themselves. From an Amiqus perspective, we are experts in how the platform works, and we are experts in interpreting organizations' workflows and helping them translate that into the system as well, and customize their account for them.
Right. Okay. So it's not us taking on the work for the client. It's you enabling them very easily to make the whole onboarding process much slicker, which is in our interests. And as we know, candidates do form a judgment about how an employer is going to be as an employer based on their experience of the recruitment process, don't they? Okay. Now, another issue, especially with regulated jobs like healthcare, is that it's actually very onerous for candidates to complete all the tasks that are required by the agency or the end hirer. And, if they're anything like me, I don't keep all my qualifications, just right to hand. They're in the loft. So it's a big deal. How can Amiqus support with this?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. No, the scenario that you're talking about, and not everyone knows where all their documents are at once. So the process that I've described earlier about receiving the email, completing your checks become available for the recruiter within their account. We have also enhanced that as well. So we have created an Amiqus wallet, which is a reusable digital profile. And that allows candidates, when they're going through their first Amiqus journey, so they're completing their checks, to securely save their verified details to their wallet, which means that they can, when they get another request, they can reuse that pre-saved verified information. So it's turning it into an even quicker process. So where we see 85% of our usual Amiqus journeys, onboarding journeys completed within 24 hours. That's 4 times faster than traditional email, manual methods that we've been speaking about. But what we're seeing is, after the release of Wallet, we are seeing a further 33% faster completion, because individuals have their documents, whether that's all of their documents, their information, they can complete their disclosure checks, all of the data that they need is saved within their wallet for reuse.
Right. Okay, so to take a hypothetical scenario, let's say I had somebody who I had placed in a contract assignment. I had used got them to use my Amiqus platform. They've saved in their wallet. And then let's say the client where I've placed them wants to transfer them to direct employment. They could literally, if we had in effect on-sold Amiqus into that client, that whole thing just moves across, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah, they can essentially just reuse it. You can issue out for new, so whether there's renewals, etc., they can issue another request. But from the candidate's perspective, they can complete that within a couple of clicks. So it's even easier for them to complete that, and they're not having to, like you say, go and find the documents in the loft and go and find all of this information. It's saved, and it's saved in a format that can be used. So there's less errors, for example, because it's all already been verified.
Just to be clear, then, obviously most recruiters specialize in some form, some functional or sectoral area. This is not just if you on-sell Amiqus to a client. This is not just for the placements you make, is it? It's for all of that client's onboarding, and increasingly, we think it will be for all of their temporary and contract staff as well. Although, to be confirmed. Okay. Now, Abbie, we've run out of time to discuss the concept, but I know that there will be listeners who want to do more and certainly are interested in if there's a way they can do this profitably and simply for their clients without just taking on more work for themselves, then they will be interested. So could you just outline what your offer is to listeners to the Recruitment Leadership Podcast?
Yeah, certainly. So the offer is 20% off annual fees. And if you contact us, you can visit our website, which is www.amicus, that's AMIQUS.co, so that's .co. And you will find our an email address there, sales@amicus.co. If you email us and just let us know that you're from the Recruitment Leadership, and when you reach out, we will be able to facilitate that discounted offer for you.
So, Abbie, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me. I certainly was not as aware as I think I should have been of this new Security, Asylum and Immigration Act and the implications of it. So it's been an education. And listeners, I urge you to explore this and don't be behind the times. Thank you, everybody, for listening. There's a whole raft of other episodes. I think we must be up to 100 at least. So have a search through and I'm sure you'll find something else. Please join us next time.
You've been listening to the Recruitment Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe, review and share so that others can find the podcast too. We really appreciate your support. If you have any questions about the topics covered or wish to find out more about recruitment leadership, please email alison@recruitmentleadership.co.uk, referencing the podcast. We're also on LinkedIn, where you can follow Recruitment Leadership and connect with Alison Humphries. Thank you for listening, and we hope you join us next time for another episode of the Recruitment Leadership Podcast.